think they failed because they hit a wall. They think something dramatic happened, burnout pressure, a crisis. But in most cases, that's not what took them out. You want to know what really did hit boredom? They got bored. The process got repetitive. The progress got slow. The days started to feel the same. And instead of staying with it, they walked away. Not because it was too hard, but because it stopped being exciting. You ever feel like that? Me too. There are times when doing the work feels more like a chore than an opportunity. When the results aren't immediate and the progress isn't obvious, it's tempting to walk away, to seek out new and exciting possibilities, to start over, to hit reset. We want instant gratification, quick fixes, and overnight transformations. But here's the thing. True success isn't always dramatic. It isn't always inspiring. Most of the time, it's not even that interesting. It's waking up and doing the work, even when the work feels ordinary. It's repeating the same fundamentals long after the newness has worn off. And it's in those moments when things get quiet, when things get dull, that your future is being decided. I used to think boredom was a signal to change direction. If it wasn't thrilling, I assumed something was wrong. But what I've learned over the years is this: boredom is part of the process. It's not a sign to quit. It's a sign you're doing it right. Because the real work, the lasting work, the kind of work that leads to something meaningful, that work is often repetitive. And how you handle that repetition, how you handle the quiet stretch between starting and succeeding, determines everything. So today, we're going to talk about how to stay committed when things get boring, how to use boredom as a compass, how to spot the signs of success, and how to avoid the trap of instant gratification. We're going to explore these ideas using examples from our own lives and from history. Let's dive in. The first step to handling boredom is understanding it. There's a reason why we experience this, a reason why so many people get stuck at this stage. And it comes down to one word: comfort. We're all creatures of habit. We like the familiar. We like knowing what's coming next. And when something becomes routine, it loses its appeal. It loses its novelty. It loses its excitement. But here's the catch. We live in a world that rewards excitement. Our brains are wired to chase novelty. We're designed to be curious. And when boredom sets in, our brain screams for change. Change anything. Do anything. Just shake things up. And that's the trap. Once you understand that your brain is trying to protect you, that it's trying to keep you safe by nudging you towards familiarity and comfort, well, you can start to resist it. You can start to lean into the discomfort of boredom. You can start to see it as a sign that you're challenging yourself. You're growing. You're stretching beyond your current understanding. It's funny because as kids, we love the process of mastering something new, learning to ride a bike, learning to tie our shoes, learning to hit a baseball. We don't care how many times we fail. We keep trying. And why? Because we're not afraid of boredom. We're not afraid of messing up. We're not afraid of losing. We just want to learn. We want to grow. We want to become. And then somewhere along the way, we lose that edge. Maybe it's because we're judged on our performance. Maybe it's because we compare ourselves to others. Maybe it's because we stop seeing the value in the process. Whatever it is, we have to relearn that lesson. We have to remember why we started in the first place. Why did we want to learn this skill? What difference would mastering it make? Who do we want to become? Once you remind yourself of those reasons, you'll be able to push through the boredom. You'll be able to stay focused on the goal, even when it seems impossible. Because here's the truth. Boredom isn't a bad thing. It's a sign that you're alive. It's a sign that you're growing. It's a sign that you're pushing yourself. Boredom is the cost of progress. It's the price of growth. And are you willing to pay that price? Now, you might be thinking, yeah, sure, it's great to be committed and disciplined, but what if nothing changes? What if I put in all this effort and it still doesn't work out? That's where the second part of our discussion comes in. Patience, staying committed, and embracing boredom are two different things. Staying patient and resisting the urge to quit are two other different things. And here's why both are so important. We live in a microwavable world. We want things now. We want them yesterday. And if we don't get them, we feel disappointed, frustrated, demotivated. We don't understand why it's taken so long. We don't understand why it's not working out. We don't understand why things are the way they are. But here's the thing. Sometimes things just take time. Sometimes you have to wait. You have to trust the process. You have to believe that it will work out. And that's not easy. It's actually incredibly difficult. It goes against our natural instincts. It goes against our upbringing. It goes against our society. But here's the thing. If you want to achieve something meaningful, if you want to build something that lasts, you have to be patient. You have to trust the process. You have to believe that it will work out. And that doesn't mean you just sit around and do nothing. That doesn't mean you just wait around and hope for the best. That means you keep going. You keep putting in the work. You keep showing up. You keep pushing forward, even when you don't see any results, even when you don't feel any progress. You keep going because you trust the process. You trust yourself. You trust the work. And that's what separates those who succeed from those who quit. It's like when you're cooking a meal. You can't just throw all the ingredients into the pan and expect it to taste good. You have to let it simmer. You have to let it cook. You have to let it marinate. You have to let it rest. You have to let it be. The same is true for achieving success. You can't just hustle all the time. You can't just grind it out. You can't just push through. You also have to let things simmer. You have to let things cook. You have to let things marinate. You have to let things rest. You have to let things be. And that's not easy. It's actually really tough. It goes against everything we're taught. It goes against everything we think we know. But here's the thing. Sometimes you have to pull back. You have to relax. You have to trust that it will all work out in the end. And that doesn't mean you stop working. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you stop trying. It means you shift your mindset. You focus on the journey, not the destination. You enjoy the process, not just the outcome. You appreciate the present moment, not just the future vision. And that's what separates those who succeed from those who quit. In the end, boredom is just a part of the journey. It's a sign that you're living, that you're growing, that you're changing. And if you can embrace it, if you can lean into it, if you can use it as fuel, then you can achieve anything. Because the road to success is paved with boredom. And the only way to navigate it is by trusting yourself, by trusting the process, and by trusting that it will all work out in the end. Thank you for listening. They say nothing changes until you change. And on the surface, it seems like solid advice. Why wait for luck or timing or circumstances to align when you can just change them yourself? Just make the move, shake things up, and you'll break through. But here's the thing. Sometimes changing nothing is the boldest move you can make. Sometimes sticking with the plan when everyone else is moving on is what gives you the edge. Let me explain. We live in an age where change is celebrated. Change your job, change your relationship status, change your city, change your look. The faster you can change, the more adaptable you are. At least that's what we're told. And it's true within reason. Changing things up can bring about change, especially when things aren't working. Switching up your workout can help you break through plateaus. Changing jobs can expose you to new opportunities. Changing course can steer you away from danger. But what if you change too often? What if you switch before you've given it enough time? Now you don't change anything. You just add more experience being inconsistent. And it's here, in the fine line between knowing when to change and when not to change, that you really need to master. Here's what you have to understand. A, not all changes are created equal. Some require a huge shift in resources or lifestyle. Others only require a small adjustment. For example, quitting your job to pursue a passion project is a massive change, but tweaking your schedule to prioritize that passion might be the wiser move. So first, you need to assess the scale of the change you're considering. Does it involve a major upheaval or a minor tweak? Secondly, it's crucial to evaluate the nature of the problem you're facing. Is it situational, systemic, or something else entirely? Maybe it's worth it to change. If you're stuck in a bad situation with no clear path forward, sometimes getting out is the smartest thing to do. Like a stock that's been consistently losing value, cutting your losses and selling might be the best decision. On the other hand, if it's a systemic issue, changing one variable might not solve the entire problem. So if your fitness goals are tied to more than just your diet, cutting out soda alone won't yield significant results. You have to address the bigger picture by changing everything all at once. Finally, consider whether you have control over the situation. If the change you want to make is within your power, go for it. But if it's something you can't influence, it might be better to accept the status quo and adjust your expectations accordingly. Like complaining about traffic. Yes, you could change routes, but wouldn't it be easier to just change your mindset about the commute? Remember, change should serve a purpose, ideally to improve your overall situation. So ask yourself why you want to change. Is it truly for the better? And if so, will that change move you closer to your goal or further away? In a nutshell, this boils down to knowing when to commit and when to adapt. There are two types of people in this world: the adapters and the committers. Adapters jump from thing to thing. They dive into projects, careers, or relationships head first, but bail quickly when they hit the first sign of trouble or when something shiny catches their eye. Committers, on the other hand, dive deep and stay there. They invest time and effort, even weathering the storms until they see the results of their hard work. Both types have their strengths and weaknesses. Adapters often find themselves exposed to various experiences and ideas, but struggle with finishing what they start. Committers tend to reach greater depths of expertise, but might miss out on opportunities elsewhere. Which type are you? Are you constantly changing course or staying committed until you've exhausted all possibilities? The truth is, we need both. We need the ability to adapt when necessary and the commitment to stick it out when the going gets tough. The key is finding the balance that works for you. It's about understanding when each approach is appropriate and leveraging both your adaptive and committed sides effectively. That's how you win at the game of change. So let's go deeper into this. How do you tell which is which? Well, you have to look at the end result. If you've changed multiple things and the results are still not what you want, then it's time to step back. You may have addressed the symptoms, but not the root cause. Take weight loss, for example. Let's say you change your diet and exercise routine. If you don't see results, you might be tempted to change again. Instead of keeping the same diet but changing exercises or switching to a different diet entirely, the real solution might lie in addressing sleep quality or stress levels, both of which influence weight loss but aren't directly related to your diet or exercise. Or take career changes. Let's say you're unhappy at work and decide to change jobs. You switch companies, roles, or even industries. If the dissatisfaction persists, it might not be the job itself that's the problem, but something else entirely, like a lack of purpose or direction in your personal life, affecting your overall well-being and job satisfaction. What this tells us is that sometimes changing nothing is exactly what you need to do. It's about identifying and addressing the root causes, not just jumping from symptom to symptom. So ask yourself these 3 questions. 1. Do you understand the root cause of the problem? 2. Have you exhausted all possible solutions without making any changes? 3. Is there anything else that might be contributing to the problem that hasn't been addressed yet? Once you've honestly assessed yourself against these questions, you'll have a clearer understanding of whether you should change things up or keep pressing on. The answer isn't always straightforward. Sometimes it's clear that change is needed, while other times it's evident that the real issue lies elsewhere. But asking these questions is the first step towards figuring it out. Next, you need to dig deep and explore. Don't just rely on your gut feeling or previous experiences. Look at the data. Talk to others. Analyze the details. Only then can you make an informed decision about whether to change or persist. Also, focus on your intent. Why do you want to change? Is it to improve or out of fear of failure? Because changing solely to avoid failure isn't really change at all. It's growth. Fear is a powerful motivator, but it leads to reactive behavior. It pushes you to abandon the familiar for the unknown, hoping for a better outcome. But the problem with this approach is that you're always chasing a moving target. You're trying to outrun the consequences of your fears instead of confronting them head on. If you're doing that, you're probably changing too much. You're making constant changes without understanding why. And that's rarely the path to success. Growth, on the other hand, is intentional. It comes from a desire to learn and evolve, not from a place of fear. It's proactive, not reactive. So when you feel the urge to change, ask yourself, is this driven by growth or fear? If it's the latter, take a moment to acknowledge those fears and address them directly. Fear of looking foolish, fear of not fitting in, fear of failing. Only then can you make a genuine change that moves you forward instead of keeping you stuck. Finally, remember that changing nothing doesn't mean standing still. It means focusing on what truly matters. It's about prioritizing the core and refining it to perfection rather than spreading yourself thin across multiple distractions. This is where your judgment and experience come into play. Don't be afraid to stay committed and see things through. After all, consistency is a key ingredient to success. So when faced with the decision of changing things or not, follow these steps. Assess the impact, explore your intent, and trust your experience. That's how you navigate the ever-changing world around you without losing yourself. To sum it all up, here's what you need to remember. Changing nothing is sometimes the boldest decision you can make. Adapting and committing are two sides of the same coin. You need both to thrive. Ask yourself these 3 questions before changing. Understand the root cause, explore your intent, and trust your experience. Change shouldn't be a knee-jerk reaction. It should be a thoughtful decision. And sometimes that decision means sticking with what you have. I used to hate boring things. To me, boring meant it wasn't working. It wasn't happening fast enough. So I was always eager to find the next big thing, the next program, the next workout routine, the next relationship hack. But life had other plans. It kept throwing me back into boredom. At first I fought it, then I ran from it. But then I learned something. It was my fault. I created my own boredom. You see, we have this idea that progress should be exciting. It should feel intense. But progress isn't necessarily exciting. It often looks like this: a habit you do every day without thinking about it, a skill that lets you get by comfortably, a relationship that feels stable and calm. But these things don't seem new. They don't challenge us. They don't require a lot of attention. So we're prone to ignore them, to take them for granted, or worse, to ruin them. We crave excitement. We want drama. We think those are the keys to progress, when in fact, excitement is the enemy of consistency. It steals our attention, it ruins our focus, and it kills our results. Boredom doesn't just test your discipline, it tempts you to destroy it, and most people fall for it. The moment things get quiet, repetitive, familiar, they start thinking something's wrong. They assume they've hit a dead end. So what do? They quit, or they switch, or they lower the bar. And every time they do, they lose what they were building. Not because it wasn't working, but because they didn't recognize what boredom actually was. You see this all the time. Someone starts a new habit. They're fired up. They eat clean for 2 weeks, or they get up early for 10 straight days. Then one morning, they wake up and it doesn't feel fun anymore. So they stop, or they tweak it, or they jump to something else. And they don't just lose the habit, they lose the momentum. They reset the entire process, and then they wonder why nothing sticks. That's the hidden cost of boredom. It whispers that something must not be working, when in reality, it's working perfectly. The bricks are being laid, the foundation is being set. But instead of continuing, people tear it down and try to build something new. They think they just need a change, but what they really need is consistency. What they really need is to stay put long enough for the results to appear. I've seen it in business. Someone builds a strategy. It starts working slowly. The numbers begin to improve, but then it stalls a little. Progress isn't exciting anymore, so they pivot. They chase something else. And just like that, they walk away from a system that was about to produce real results. They were inches away, but they let boredom convince them to turn back. I've seen it in relationships. Someone starts working on themselves. They build better habits. They communicate better, but it takes time. Growth is slow. And instead of staying the course, they drift back to old patterns. Not because the new way wasn't better, but because the old way was more comfortable. It was familiar. It didn't ask them to be consistent. You've got to understand, boredom isn't the enemy. It's the crossroads. It's the place where most people decide whether they're serious or just interested. The ones who quit at boredom, they keep restarting their lives. new goals, new habits, new direction, over and over, always beginning, never finishing. But the ones who push through, they build something that lasts. And there's another trap. Some people don't quit completely. They just lowered their standards. They keep the habit, but they cut the corner. They stop aiming for excellence and settle for just enough. But here's the problem. Excellence only lives in the full effort. When you water it down, you lose the edge. And once the edge is gone, so is the growth. So don't respond to boredom by changing the plan. Respond by doubling down. Reinforce your standards. Tighten your discipline. Remind yourself why you started. The boring part is not the problem. It's the bridge. It's the stretch between now and the breakthrough. And if you can walk across it without checking out, without switching lanes, you'll get to where most people never reach. Every time you abandon something too early, you trade momentum for novelty. And novelty always feels good for a minute, but it never lasts. What lasts is consistency. What lasts is resilience. What lasts is the decision to keep going even when your feelings try to vote against it. So when boredom shows up, don't change everything. Don't walk away. Don't water it down. Just keep showing up. Because that's what success is built on. And it's how most people lose it. Right at the moment they were closer than they realized. Now, I still don't love boring things. Like most people, I'd rather be excited every step of the way. But now I understand that excitement is an unreliable source of motivation. If you want to make real progress, you need to get comfortable being bored. Here's what that looks like in practice. First, go small. There's no such thing as too small of a habit. An extra 5 minutes of studying before dinner, 2 extra push-ups on your workouts, 1 page of your book. These aren't exciting, but they're reliable. Second, limit your choices. Remove as much guesswork as possible. Why? Because decisions drain your willpower. If you have to think about what you're doing, you're less likely to do it consistently. So simplify. You remove the guesswork. You don't try to make it exciting. You make it automatic. Third, accept imperfection. No one ever feels 100% motivated to do the right thing. So if you wait for the perfect moment to do your work, you'll never do it. Instead, do it now. Do it even if you're not feeling it. And fourth, use boredom to your advantage. Instead of fighting it, embrace it. Find ways to double down. If it's getting boring, it means it's working. So push through. If you can combine these 4 approaches, you'll be able to stay on track when others are already losing steam. And that's when you'll get the breakthrough. The others won't because they gave up on the boring part, the part that looked like hard work, so they switched to something new. But you don't do that. You dig deep. You grind it out. You get uncomfortable, and you don't look back. You know what's on the other side of boredom. Patience, your ability to stay focused, to stick to a path even though it isn't immediately exciting. That's what separates people who get results from those who don't. And the key to patience is understanding the quiet power of consistent effort. Most people want to skip the effort and just enjoy the outcome. They want to feel excited. They don't want to deal with boredom. But here's the truth. Effort beats excitement every time. Excitement fades. Interest goes away. But effort stays constant. Effort builds momentum. It builds the foundation for success. So if you want to beat boredom, if you want to outlast it and leverage it, then just keep putting in the work. Even if it's boring, even if it's not exciting, even if you don't feel like it, just do it. Because that's where the real growth happens. That's where you become who you want to be. Not in the highlight moments, not in the peak experiences, but in the quiet, consistent effort that builds up over time. You don't need hype. You need rhythm. You don't need fireworks. You need follow-through. And once you train yourself to stay steady, regardless of the mood, you move into rare territory. Because now, UVA built the one skill that holds everything else together. Consistency in the absence of excitement. That's the difference. That's the edge. The ability to keep going when it doesn't feel magical anymore. And when you can do that, nothing can stop you. This is an incredible quote, and I want to read it again because it's so important. So listen to this. You don't need to love boredom. You do need to respect it because it's always part of the process. Every worthwhile pursuit will eventually feel repetitive. And in that moment, you VA got a choice. Stay with it and let it compound, or jump to something new and start over again. And if you keep starting over, you'll always be a beginner. So what do? You train for boredom. You prepare for it. You expect it. And when it shows up, you don't flinch. You don't panic. You just keep going. Same time, same standard, same effort. And if you can do that day after day, long after the mood has passed, something powerful happens. You start to separate. I think we've all been here before. We start something new, maybe a New Year's resolution, a goal, a project, whatever. And at first, it's fun. It's novel. There are fireworks. There's excitement. But then the honeymoon phase ends and things start to get boring. And when that happens, we have a choice to make. We can either stick with it and embrace the boredom, or we can quit and go do something else. And most people choose to quit. They jump from one thing to the next, chasing the next big thing, the next dopamine hit, and they never finish anything. But those who succeed, those who achieve their goals, those who build the extraordinary lives they desire, they are the ones who stay with it through the boredom. They learn how to embrace the mundane, how to find joy in the ordinary, because they know that that is where the real work happens. As someone who has worked with countless entrepreneurs and executives, I can tell you that this is a skill that you will see consistently in those who succeed. They learn how to tune out the noise, how to ignore the doubters, and how to stay focused on what they want to create. They don't need the hype. They don't need the fireworks. They just need the rhythm. And so, I want you to think about the areas of your life where you want to make progress, where you want to improve. Maybe it's your health or your relationships or your career or your finances. What are you willing to be bored by? What are you willing to embrace the mundane with? Because that is where the real growth happens. That's where you will find the breakthrough moments, the unexpected opportunities, the serendipity of life. It's in the ordinary that the magic happens. Now, I'm not saying that you should never change course, never pivot, never try something new. Of course not. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes it's wise. But too often I see people quitting on things that they could have succeeded at if they had just stuck with it. Too often we throw in the towel on our dreams because we're bored. We lose interest. We want something more exciting, more stimulating. And in doing so, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to create something truly special. So here's my challenge to you today. Embrace the boredom. Find joy in the ordinary. Stay with it through the tough times, through the doubts, through the setbacks, because that is where the real growth happens. That's where you will discover your true potential. You know, there was a study done by psychologists that found that those who are able to delay gratification, who are able to resist the temptation to seek out immediate pleasure in favor of long-term rewards, they are better able to cope with boredom. They have a greater sense of self-control, and they are more likely to achieve their goals. In fact, the researchers were able to predict with a high degree of accuracy who would go on to be successful based on their ability to delay gratification. Now, this is such an important finding because it tells us that boredom, tolerance, the ability to sit with discomfort, to embrace the mundane, to stay focused on what we want to create despite the lack of immediate gratification, that's a skill that can be developed. It's not something that we're just born with. And so I want you to think about the areas of your life where you want to make progress. Maybe it's your health or your relationships or your career or your finances. What are you willing to be bored by? What are you willing to embrace the mundane with? Because that is where the real growth happens. That's where you will find the breakthrough moments, the unexpected opportunities, the serendipity of life. It's in the ordinary that the magic happens. And let me tell you a story that illustrates this point perfectly. A few years ago, I was working with a client of mine who was trying to break into the tech industry. She had all the right credentials, the right degree, the right experience, but she was struggling to land a job. And so I asked her, "What are you doing to stand out? What are you doing to get ahead of the competition?" And she told me that she was going to networking events, talking to people, building relationships. And I asked her, "How many people have you talked to?" And she said, "I've talked to dozens of people, but I haven't gotten any bites." And I said, "Well, keep going. Keep talking to people. Keep building relationships. Don't give up. And she did. And a year later, she landed her dream job at a major tech company. And when I asked her how she did it, what was different this time, she told me that she had followed my advice and she had kept going. But there was something else that she hadn't told me. She had fallen in love with the process. She had fallen in love with learning about tech, with meeting new people, with building relationships. She had fallen in love with the journey, and that's when things started to change. That's when she began to attract the opportunities she wanted. Because when you love the process, when you embrace the journey, when you find joy in the ordinary, that's when the magic happens. We live in a world where we are constantly distracted, where we are bombarded with notifications, messages, emails, invitations. We have FOMO. We have an endless scroll feed. We have instant access to everything we could possibly want or need. And it's easy to get caught up in that. It's easy to chase the next big thing, the next dopamine hit, the next exciting opportunity. But if we do, we'll never finish anything. If we do, we'll never create anything of real substance. And so I challenge you to embrace the boredom, to find joy in the ordinary, to stay focused on what you want to create even when it doesn't feel magical anymore. Because that's where the real growth happens. That's where you will discover your true potential. It's not about being disciplined. It's about being interested. It's not about forcing yourself to do something you hate. It's about finding something you love and getting lost in it. It's not about grinding it out. It's about savoring the journey. The best advice I can give you is this. Keep going, even if it doesn't feel like you're making progress. Even if it doesn't feel like anything is happening. Keep going. That's where the growth happens. That's where the magic happens. Just keep going. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching.